First of all, because of the event and because of the exciting things that we're going to talk about over these next coming days. I'm very honored to be part of this famous row of workshops. I think that the topics that, not just in my group, but the entire program will touch upon are so important. I think it's wonderful to have all you guys, all the students, and also today a broader selection of people peeking in over the shoulders of some of the future minds who are going to shape not just Oulu, but I suspect a lot of places around the world. So I think that's pretty exciting to be part of. So I will do a very broad-stroked introduction to some of the work that we do in Aarhus. It will not be very detailed on the topics that we're going to work with. Just to warn you, it'll be much more detailed when we go to the real work. But I thought it would be good to give a sort of a glimpse into how we look at urban development and the interactions that we try to create spaces for. So this is the title of the track that I'm going to teach and supervise here. But I think, in fact, what I would like to talk to you about is this. It's how we build our cities, how we build our urban spaces so that they're nice to be in, with the right governance models, supported by good systems. And that's very difficult. So first, just a quick introduction to myself. I represent a couple of places. I'm part of the Participatory IT Center at Aarhus University. A long history of working with the participatory elements, both of IT development and also the users, so when we have built these systems. Then I'm also part of what is called CAVI, the Center for Advanced Visualization and Interaction, where we work with all kinds of representations of data. We worked for a couple of years trying to understand how the digital is shaping our cities, and we feel we are still just scratching the surface. So this is a book that's a couple of years old, but just tonight, I mean 2:30 this night, I got the final edition of this new book that's coming out this week, free for download and print. It's called Urban Interaction Design Towards City Making, and that represents many of the thoughts that I think are shaping up in this field that's coming together of people who are trying to figure out what is this mesh of cities and technology. Okay, so Aarhus, for those of you who haven't been there or don't know, it's the second largest city in Denmark. Looks like this. The university is a pretty big portion of that city. About a fifth of the population are at the university. Denmark is 5 million, so it's not a big country, and it's manageable, I'd say. I mean, it's like a small Chinese city or the city of Hamburg or something like, just for comparison. But there's some interesting things there. It's being heavily redeveloped. About a third of the city is being redone over a decade. So many of the things that we talk about are actually being put into practice, both physically and organization-wise and technology-wise. And while it's not one of the biggest cities of the world, but you know what? There are many cities who are not that big. This is the world population, our 7 billion strong humanity. Half of us don't live in cities yet. And of those who do, a quarter actually live in cities that aren't that big. 1 million or less. So only 7% live in these mega cities like Tokyo or Dhaka, or like really big cities. So it's actually quite interesting to understand the dynamics of cities that aren't like really big. And it's also a bit easier when we're trying to understand how a city is operating. And we have been doing that for quite some time. As part of a project called Urban Interaction Design, we've sort of been tracing these different versions of, you could say, the digital city. because that's not a new phenomenon. It's been called a lot of things, and thinkers and researchers have tried to understand these materials, these conditions, these methods that we can apply to support life. At the moment, it's usually called the smart city, but it's still just the city, right? You cannot take the technology away from the city. I mean, infrastructure has been shaping cities like since forever. City is just basically just one specific type of infrastructure. But on the other hand, something is happening. There is this meshing, this coming together of a lot of concerns that used to be sort of separated. So no matter which service, no matter which part, which element of the city you're looking at, you cannot just look at it in isolation. That has never been the case, but it's increasingly less the case. I mean, if you do a bike service, it has to be, all wired up and monitored and supported and advertised and monetized. I mean, it's so complex no matter what you want to do. So while there's been a lot of naive conceptions about technology in the city, there's also been some less naive and you could say a bit more skeptical. And I'll show you one, which I think many of you may know it, but I think it's pretty spot on in terms of the skepticism where this could go, what this could lead to. And that will then in turn take us to what we could put instead. So this is a short clip from a movie by Jacques Tati. Do we have sound? Oh, we hope so. And he's in the late 50s experiencing this very modern house. The sound is just a bit off, I'm sorry. The poor man is just trying to get a glass of water. The family is eating outside. And while this is funny, we all know the situation of going into a toilet and trying to figure out whether the soap dispenser is mechanical, whether it's, automatic, or if it's just broken. I mean, this is every day for us now, and he saw that coming. This is what we try to avoid when we design urban interactions, because it will be hell, it'll be very dangerous, and it'll not be very efficient. So just to schematize what I think is happening, it's the supply and demands relations. They used to be neatly organized in silos, in verticals. If you're in the utility company somewhere, you could just focus on that utility. Well, that is sort of breaking down. No matter what you do, you have to be part of someone else's value chain. Now, what do people then do? This is one way of building an urban interaction support system. It's from Rio, you probably all know it. It's IBM's control center that they built to integrate and monitor a lot of data in Rio. And it's kind of not that participatory. This is a very specific kind of interaction. You can basically get fined or get arrested. Just outside this center, there's a very different composition of services. It's totally open. This is the favela called Rocinha. It has the same population as the city of Aarhus, a little more than the city of Oulu, 250,000, but they live in less than 1 square kilometer. They've organized very neatly around totally open systems. So this is the open data or open society extreme. Everything is, the sewer is open. It opens up right down to Ipanema. Garbage collection and the other way is open. Electricity, if you want that, you just hook onto the system. Sorry about that. So everything is open, and obviously that's not necessarily a good model. It has some advantages. It's very human scale. You can interact with it and appropriate it in nice ways, but it doesn't really work. Not the way that we would like things to work. So the problem is, if we have these extremes, the extremes are totally governed and they're totally open. You could say if every city, or if a city was governed like iOS or something, I mean the Apple ecosystem, probably wouldn't be that nice either. And so this open version isn't gonna fly. So what is? Basically, that's the problem. It's not easy. And where I come from, this could be a slogan. Actually, the slogan for Aarhus is Danish for progress. Everybody hates it, but hey, you have to have a slogan. But yeah, okay, so there's all this smartness. We need to get smarter, faster, quicker, beat the Chinese and the Finns and everyone in the big game, the global drive for the bottom. But actually, we want societies where there's good measures for conflict resolution. That's a very important part of a city, and unless we understand how this is embedded into these systems, it's not going to be the societies that have the values that we would actually like. So in essence, all this smartness, all this talk about new technologies, it's basically a cultural transformation. So now the question suddenly becomes, how do you transform a culture that's connected to technology? Well, we've been thinking about that for some years as well, but we've been thinking about it based on the silos, on the verticals, on the neatly delineated responsibilities that we have. So with this complexity comes also a complexity in organizing ourselves around this. Aarhus is the European Capital of Culture in 2017, and we try to embed this in this search for what are the you could say the good ways to respond to much of this these challenges. And one of the ways have been this initiative, which I will now talk a bit about. It's called Smart Aarhus. It's not SMART, which would have been pretty cool, but no, it's pretty boring. But it has a subtitle, A Scandinavian Third Way. And the aspiration is to try to balance between the highly commercialized and the highly centralized. So you could say trying to balance out some of the efficiency and money thinking with some of the values that we actually think should be present in a society. So the tagline and the motto of this initiative is also kind of stupid, but at least ambitious. So Aarhus actually wants to show the world how to do this Scandi style. But the interesting thing is that this has not very much to do about building systems. Yeah, we build systems all the time, but it's actually figuring out how this cultural transformation fits into reaching this goal. So I won't go into details on how this is structured. It's basically trying to figure out what the fuck's going on and then try to implement that, getting both top level buy-in and making sure the bottom is with us. We had a lot of workshops, work groups, trying to figure out who actually wants to be part of this. Some companies wanted to be there, some certainly didn't. All the old incumbents, all the big industry players, they stayed away. So healthcare, none of that. All the telecoms, we didn't see them. Energy companies, no way. because they had their nicely defined verticals that worked. Now they're coming. And one of the reasons why some people showed up and some people didn't was the budget, because there wasn't one. It was basically only the people who felt this was an important thing to do that showed up. And interestingly, now this is, what, 2.5 years it's been running. It's basically been the same model in many cities. That we have two kinds of dynamics going on. Together with the Danish Ministry for Urban and Housing and Rural Affairs, and I think Nordic Affairs as well, sort of everything nobody else wanted to do, we organized the Danish Smart City Network. So we have different cities, ministries, and organizations, and some companies there trying to put together the experiences from these different cities. And we quite clearly see these two ways of approaching it. One is sort of the old verticals trying to reinvent themselves. There's a lot of money. If you look at the EU budget, Horizon 2020, everyone in academia is looking at Horizon 2020, it's going to save us. If you look what the smart city money is invested in, it's basically mobility, so transportation, or it's energy. So it's the old big infrastructures that are being reinvented, and that's for good reasons, because they have an impact on how societies run. But they shape these initiatives very strongly, and they invite certain kinds of thinking and certain kinds of people into the conversation in a quite strong way. Now that's one kind of projects. You could say that's the Smart City Classic. And we see them everywhere, of course, because there is money. But on the other side, we see another one. Many initiatives that want to understand the new governance models. So this is smart cities as an organizational exercise. What are the governance models that actually work in this transition? And we have quite good data on how people are thinking about this. We just had a survey that the ministry did of all municipalities in Denmark. Not all of them answered, but we have a pretty clear idea of how they think about this. And we were clever enough to ask them, even if they said they weren't doing smart city stuff, we asked them, well, then what do you do, no matter what you call it? And much of that was basically what could be called smart city stuff. So, and it's becoming a central problem and a central activity for cities and organizations working within the realm of cities to figure this out. So it's interesting to see this balance between the very technology-oriented projects and initiatives, and then the more, you could say, holistic or governance-driven. And at the moment, there's kind of a nice balance between these, but it'll be very interesting to see how it pans out. If you look across these initiatives in Denmark, and that really counts all the initiatives that are driven by the cities, so it's not just a sector. Interestingly, there's a focus on the informal organization, because the formal organizations, they cannot follow this development. So what happens is that you cannot predict which department or which organization in a city that actually drives this. In Aarhus, it was a university that took the initiative. In Copenhagen, it was some of the people in the environment department. In a city called Vejle, it was the integration services, because they were pretty cool with mobile apps for refugees and people who had to learn the language. So it's a very strong focus actually on this informality that's actually seeming to be what's filling the gaps that the formal systems are not doing. And of course, when it's informal, it becomes very important to share these experiences, to make sure that you have people to spar with and to show what you do and exchange. The tools and technologies I've put up here are secondary. They're secondary in the sense that they're not driving these developments. But of course, they're not secondary when they're there. We need to have focus on them too. And you could say in this context and this summer school and this symposium, for me, it's figuring out how can we support these informalities also when they grow into institutions. So of course we have a technology focus. Some of the things we've done, well, we tried to figure out how urban space works when these systems are suddenly there. Just one example called City Bug Report. Henrik, who sits here, also came up with the idea. Lots of people worked on it. It's very simple. This is City Hall Tower in Aarhus. It's, everybody knows these apps where you can fix my street. There's a hole in my street. Well, why don't we just have one interface for everything? Fix my school, fix my child, fix. So file a bug report. We know that when we work with software. There's no technical reason for not having this. And in order to show so that's one thing, the whole system, web, mobile, and so on. It's pretty simple stuff. But in order to show the buy-in from the city to respond to people's needs, we put it up on City Hall Tower, how efficiently they responded. So it builds up. If a lot of conversation goes back and forth, it goes up. So if there's a lot of these balls in the top, it's not so good. And excuse me, Henrik, but the technology probably wasn't the toughest part about building this. We know how to build systems, and even though putting all these stupid LEDs on the tower was a lot of work, the really big issue was getting the people who work in that building to give us their data and to think it was any value for the city. So the learnings from this wasn't that we built this was just a temporary system working on some data we had available. But as an entry point, an incision into this conversation, very, very practical and concrete, showing us all the barriers, people running, screaming away because they were afraid that the data was going to get exposed. That was a real learning from this kind of project. And we've done many of this. And as we will talk about in the coming days, we're probably not going to get it right with these first systems that are going put out. But at least we can learn from these mistakes. So at the moment, we're like doing flu shots for the thoroughly technologized society. We're trying to learn how to respond to these opportunities and challenges, because, there will be a lot. So let's not think that we can build the perfect system in the first shot, but let's think how can we build organizations that can gradually grow actually these organizational learnings so that we can work with these technologies in the best possible way. Yep, if you come to Aarhus, and you should, this is being put into practice, the new urban media space. That's a big library and citizen services that's opening next year. We have a heavy focus on what we call media architecture. This is Hans Christian Andersen on the central square of Copenhagen. But the interesting thing in this context is the media facade that are popping up now. Of course, it's made in Aarhus. And we try to bring people from around the world together in, for instance, this occasion, the Media Architecture Biennial, where we talk about these things with a focus not just on the technology, but actually on the lives that are made between the systems and not with the systems. Yeah. So if you're looking at me and expecting me to stop, I will stop. And thank you once again
thank you,
for this.